I still remember how everything started with that almost cinematic glow, the kind you only see in relationship stories long that feel too perfect to be true. He showed up with this charm that felt effortless, like he'd rehearsed for a role he was born to play. And honestly, I let myself get carried away, heart in the front seat, intuition tied up in the trunk, waving a tiny flag I completely ignored. It's funny how we do that, right? We mistake intensity for connection simply because it feels good in the moment. In those early days, he paid attention to every detail, which made me think, wow, this is what emotional safety must feel like. If I mentioned a book I loved, he'd pretend he had read it too. Once, he even talked about The Alchemist like Paulo Coelho was his cousin. That kind of mirroring is common in toxic relationship stories, but at first it feels like magic. I thought we were aligned, soul to soul, like one of those cosmic partnerships people write about online. Turns out, sometimes alignment is just someone studying you quietly. Looking back, I can see how quickly I romanticized everything. I would tell friends that it felt like meeting someone I'd known for years, even though we'd only gone on 3 dates and one disastrous attempt at cooking pasta together. But that's how these relationship stories long typically begin, wrapped in warmth, wrapped in wonder, wrapped in a version of love you desperately want to believe in. And even though the surface seemed flawless, there were tiny cracks forming underneath, the kind you only notice when you stop smiling long enough to look closer. The first shift was so small I almost brushed it off. He started questioning my memory over tiny things, where we ate, what I had said, even how I reacted to simple moments. In relationship stories long, this phase is always quiet, almost invisible, but it plants doubt fast. I remember thinking, maybe I'm just tired, because that's what he kept repeating. And when someone says it enough times, you start borrowing their version of reality. Soon, it became a pattern. If I confronted him about something he clearly said, he'd laugh and tell me I was being too sensitive, like sensitivity was some kind of flaw. It's a classic step in toxic relationship stories, but when you're inside, it feels like you're the one messing up. I even started keeping notes on my phone just to check if I was imagining things. Funny how that felt normal at the time. What really struck me was how his tone changed, still soft, still sweet, but coated with this subtle condescension that made me shrink a little every day. Gaslighting doesn't arrive screaming, it arrives whispering. And once you start doubting yourself, the door opens for something much darker to walk in next, even if you don't see it coming yet. The emotional shift hit harder than the gaslighting. One night after a long day, I told him I felt overwhelmed, and instead of listening, he sighed like I was a burden. That tiny moment sticks with me because it became a pattern, my feelings always inconvenient. In relationship stories long, this is where the spiral starts without you realizing you're in it. You shrink a little to keep the peace, thinking it's temporary. There was a day at a friend's birthday when he pulled me aside, angry that I was too friendly. I had only laughed at someone's joke. That small blow-up left me apologizing for something I didn't do. This is classic in toxic relationship stories. They hurt you, then expect you to clean it up. I remember sitting in the car, silent, trying to calculate how to act next time so it wouldn't happen again. That's when your identity starts slipping through your fingers. Another time, I shared an idea for a project I was excited about, and he dismissed it with a subtle smirk, saying, "You really think you can handle something like that?" It wasn't loud, but it cut deep. These micro moments pile up fast, tiny emotional taps that become bruises you can't see but feel constantly. And once you accept that version of yourself, it becomes way easier for the next revelation to hit even harder. I wish I could say I found out everything in one dramatic moment, but it was something stupidly simple that opened the door. One morning, his phone lit up with a message that said, "Did you delete our photos like you promised?" My stomach dropped. In relationship stories long, that's usually the turning point, the moment the fairy tale rips. I didn't touch the phone, I just stared at it, feeling my whole body go cold. From there, tiny clues started popping up everywhere. A receipt for a dinner I wasn't at, a second Instagram account he thought I'd never notice. Even the cologne, he started using one he swore he hated. These little details are so common in toxic relationship stories, but when it's your life, you feel weirdly numb, like you're watching someone else's movie. I kept connecting dots quietly because I wanted to know the whole picture before reacting. The final confirmation came when I found a voice note he forgot to delete, him talking to someone else with that same soft tone he once used with me. And I swear, hearing that shook me more than any lie. It wasn't anger I felt, it was this deep clarity, like a fog lifting. That's when I realized I didn't just need answers, I needed a plan for what came next, and it wasn't going to look anything like he expected.
The funny thing is, everyone imagines they'd explode the moment they discover a double life. I didn't. I went quiet, calm in a way that almost scared me. In relationship stories long, this is the part where the main character stops reacting and starts observing. So instead of asking him anything, I began collecting the truth like puzzle pieces. Every message, every receipt, every lie he forgot he told. One night, he came home acting extra sweet, bringing my favorite snack like nothing was happening. I just smiled and let him talk. Meanwhile, I had already forwarded evidence to my email, deleted nothing, and made sure everything was backed up. In toxic relationship stories, silence is underrated. It's where you take your power back without him noticing. He thought he was still leading the dance. He had no idea I'd memorized every step ahead of him. My favorite moment was when he bragged about being transparent, and I simply said, interesting, and watched him freeze for half a second. That micro-expression told me everything. He sensed something, but not enough to adjust course. That's when I knew the truth was going to surface in a way he couldn't twist or talk his way out of, and I was strangely ready for the fallout. The unraveling started quietly, almost anticlimactic. I sent the screenshots, not to him, but to the people he'd been lying to simultaneously. Within minutes, he called me 3 times in a row, voice shaking, trying to sound calm. In relationship stories long, this is the moment the mask finally slips. He wasn't angry at the truth, he was terrified he couldn't shape it anymore. A day later, he showed up at my place acting confused, like he had no idea why everyone was misinterpreting things. Classic move in toxic relationship stories. Pretend innocence, then play the victim. I remember watching him talk in circles, desperately trying different versions of the same lie, as if one might magically convince me. But that moment felt different. I wasn't hurt, I was just done. It's amazing how clear things become when you stop letting someone rewrite your reality. The best part? He realized he had lost control, not because I yelled, but because I didn't. I simply said, "Everything is out there now," and his whole expression dropped. No performance could save him from the truth being in everyone's hands. And as I watched him walk away, scrambling for a narrative he couldn't rebuild, I finally understood something important, something that would hit me even harder in the next step of the story. When he finally stepped out of my life, the silence felt strange at first. Not peaceful, just unfamiliar. I had spent so long adjusting myself to his moods that I had to relearn what my own voice sounded like. In relationship stories long, this moment is always portrayed as victorious, but honestly, it's messy. Healing feels more like taking off a tight shoe you didn't even realize was hurting you. The first real sign of freedom came in small things. Making plans without worrying he'd get jealous, laughing loudly without checking who was watching. One afternoon, I sat alone in a cafe, ordered the drink he always mocked, and realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. These tiny wins matter. In toxic relationship stories, people forget the power of reclaiming the quiet parts of your life, the ones that felt too fragile to touch before. After a while, my intuition started coming back online. You know that gut feeling radar we all have? Mine was buried under his opinions, but slowly I felt it waking up again. I started journaling, reading again, even taking small risks, like applying for projects I'd once talked myself out of. And it hit me. The real freedom wasn't exposing his truth.
It was choosing mine every single day, and that's a kind of strength no one can take away. If you've ever felt yourself shrinking in a relationship, or if parts of this reminded you of your own story, stick with me. I'm creating more videos that break down these moments, what they mean, how to spot them, and how to rebuild your self-trust piece by piece. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment sharing your experience. Your voice can help someone else feel less alone. And trust me, the more you understand these patterns, the harder it becomes for anyone to dim your light again. Let's walk through this together.